Hey guys, back with EP5 of Talk Talk Talk, and today we have a very special guest, Miss Pearl Pawiset or AJ.Pearl.
Hello.
So currently you're a director and an instructor at GSSE, am I correct?
Well, I am currently an instructor. I'm a lecturer at GSSE. I was a program director, but now my lovely colleague, Ajan Panin Ajan Air, is the director at GSSE.
Could you briefly explain what GSSE is? I'm sure some people that might listen to this might be a little bit confused about what it is, what it's about.
Sure. So GSSE is a program under the School of Global Studies, and the School of Global Studies is one of the 20-something faculties within Thammasat University. GSSE stands for Global Studies and Social Entrepreneurship. And so we study global phenomenon, and then we also equip our students with the tools such as design thinking, systems thinking, to enable them to solve global issues, which are normally complex. And that would be the social entrepreneurship part. So really we're trying to create the next generation of leaders, change makers, and social entrepreneurs.
Oh, that sounds so interesting. I'm sure you've probably been teaching for quite a few years now.
Yes, so I have been teaching for I think like 8 or 9 years or so.
Really? That's so long.
Yes, you were probably.
I was not even in university or probably in high school at that point.
Yes.
So,
So I can tell you a little more about it.
Yeah.
I've been teaching at Thammasat for about 4 or 5 years, but prior to that I was doing kind of more informal teaching. And I also taught, I was an instructor in the U.S. Army. So that was really where I started my teaching career.
So, since you've taught for so long, I'm guessing when you're in a class the atmosphere is probably more chill and warm and you're just wanting to help people. What do you think your teaching style is?
Okay, so that's a very, very good question because it's actually changing. I think the longer I teach, the more relaxed I am. So the first few years that I taught, I think I was much stricter. But generally, I try to keep the classroom engaged or engaging and try to really, I respect students' time. I value my time, I value students' time, so I want to make it very efficient in the classroom so that, for the 1, 2, or 3 hours that you're in my class, I want you to get the most out of it.
What's one thing you would usually want to tell your students, or one thing you would hope they would gain from your class that you teach?
Well, right now I teach 2 different classes, and they're very different subjects. One is a Foundations of Academic Writing class. So, of course, for that class, I want students to leave with the skills in academic writing that will help them during their career. And then the other class is a case study class on globalization. So different topic, but I think in general, most teachers impart knowledge, and then some classes work on your skills. But for me, I think it's knowledge, it's skills, and it's also attitude. So for me, as a teacher, at least in my writing class, yes, I want you to go, to leave the class with knowledge. But then I also want you to be able to write well, so that would be skills. But then I also want you to have an attitude that is, it's going to be lifelong learning. So even if you don't feel that you're a good writer yet, to have that attitude to want to keep doing it and growing and getting better.
Because when I was younger, I always used to want to be someone that could write things, and I always used to be more of a freelance writer rather than academically. So when I came into university, I always thought, oh, I'm going to get to learn about academic writing, but I thought I wasn't good enough. And then as time went on, I realized there were so many different factors, but then it's also about the person who teaches you. If they engage you, if they support you, I feel like that's a major factor to make someone want to keep their passion for writing, right? I think keep going strong. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that. And there's research that actually backs that up. and I don't want to put you to sleep with the research part, but in brief, there's some research that suggests that to develop passion for young people is to really allow them to enjoy that subject or that hobby or that skill. So I think it's really important to have that positive mindset about it.
So, incorporating with Thomas University, how you've been teaching here, I actually happened to stumble across your video on TEDx Thammasat about, and you were actually a speaker on there. Could you tell me a little bit about your experience, like the process, when did it all begin? Because I think that's actually something that's really interesting.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I was part of the TEDx Thammasat the first year that it started, and I think the one thing I will say is that I was really impressed with how it was all student run. So everything that happened was student run, and I was just there to make a short talk. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes and behind the stage, and all the coordination. So I would say that it was a big challenge for me. Not something that came naturally. And from the time that I found out that I would be doing the talk sometime in January, late January, to the time of the talk, which was like late April, it was really intense. I had to come up with a topic and decide what I was going to say. And the thing with TED Talks is that they're kind of permanent. They're permanent. That means that in 20 years from now, my nephews could search online and then watch it. So there is some pressure to do it well. But I will say that everyone has a TED Talk in them, in him or her.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like when I see people talk, I feel like, oh, they must be so natural speaking. But then, like hearing from you, how you said it put pressure on you and you had to prepare. And I'm sure the topic that you chose was something that was probably something that came from your heart, something that you wanted other people to know your opinion and your voice. But could you tell me and probably tell everyone that's watching this, what topic did you choose and like what was the reason behind it?
Sure. So I chose Thai education because I'm working within this field. And before I came to the university, I was actually working within an informal school in the Klong Toi slums. And before that, I was coaching sports in the southern province of Thailand, and I also was a trainer for this nonprofit organization helping with migrant women. And then thinking about my own experiences in education, my journey and the journey that my friends had within education in Thailand and abroad, and then my own studies because I am a graduate of the School of Education. So these are topics that I think about when I'm folding laundry. I'm thinking about education, and then dreaming. I'm probably thinking about education. So I mean, it wasn't the only topic that I thought I would give. I started off with a different topic, and then it just kind of became more of a topic on education simply because this is really my pursuit right now.
So when I actually watched your video and I saw how you spoke so passionately and you were so like involved, and I'm sure like, do you think since when you did your TED Talk, from then until the present, do you think anything's changed?
For me, or for society, or for
like for people? You, because do you think your thoughts on this topic have changed, and do you think maybe society's changed in a better way, or do you think it's maybe gone back a little bit? What do you think?
Okay, so I would say for myself, I'm actually quite shy in front of the camera, and so it's hard for me to go back and watch it, right? But looking at it, I think in terms of myself, I don't think my opinions have changed much. I would say that, of course, I wish there were more things that I could have added, or maybe I could have been more clear about.
Yeah. Everyone's thought about change when changing something that they can't take back
Right.
when it's up unloaded.
Yes, but in terms of do I think any differently, I would say not significantly. Do I think society or Thai education has changed since the talk? I think maybe slightly. I sense that, when I look at different talks out there, people are not using the word fix as much.
Could you tell me what fix means?
I think fix is to take something that is broken or not functional or not optimal, and then within the constraints of that thing, whether it be a gadget or something, to make it work better based on what it was meant to do.
Because fix sometimes has different meanings in different fields. You could have it educationally, you could have it physically, you could have it emotionally. And I actually think that's something that's so good that you have an opinion on something, and I feel like when other people probably go on that video, or our future generations will probably have the same idea, or hopefully things will improve and things will get better. And also before this, I remember seeing something that actually struck me and made me go, oh my goodness, really, you did something so amazing. I heard that you actually moved to America when you were really young, about first grade, second grade, and you talked about how you once served in the US military. And that's something that usually most people wouldn't do, that sometimes back then you probably wouldn't find common in women to want to do it, but compared to now is where more people engage and they believe that anyone could be able to do this profession. Why did you choose to join the US military?
Yes, so when I was in high school, I was very, very restless, very idealistic, and I had this, sense of wanting to kind of reach my potential and really push myself and find out where my limits were, and I just didn't feel that a normal, say, university experience would give me that. And so I went to the U.S. Military Academy, West Point, and that is what led me into the military, because after you you get commissioned and you graduate and get commissioned from West Point, you have what's called a military service obligation, where you would serve for a certain number of years before you could then either decide to continue for more years, or to pursue other professions.
And people have always been saying to get into the military is something that takes a lot of strength and a lot of patience. And was the process very hard before you actually got into the military? Because I'm sure there was some sort of training that had to go on before you achieved this.
Yeah, so the process for getting into the military academy is quite difficult. The acceptance rate is low. You need to do all these different things. So if you can remember when you were applying here, you might have had to have a portfolio, you have an interview, you had to maybe go get a test score. I had to do all of that as well. But for me, I had to also take a physical fitness test, as well as get a congressional nomination. And then, of course, I had an interview, I had to write essays, I had to get letters of recommendation. So it was a very involved process in terms of getting from my high school to the military academy.
I mean, there must have been so many different parts of the U.S. military, such as people who were actually on field, and people who were driving the helicopters, and people who were fixing stuff, the mechanics who fix everything. And did you get to try each and everything, or did you have your certain field that you stuck to, that you either liked or you thought that you would succeed best?
So during our final year at West Point, so it would be equivalent to what's your senior year, you would pick a field. So I picked a field, and we call it a branch. And the branch that I picked was aviation, which is Army aviation. So my role, or my duty position is aviation officer. And in the Army, most of our aircraft are helicopters. We do have some fixed wings, but I essentially went to flight school after West Point, and then I specialized in the UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter. So I was a pilot, a helicopter pilot. And yes, during the course of your Army career, you progress. So you start, maybe at a team level job, and then you supervise more and more people. So when I started, I was in a maintenance company. So we were the ones to fix the helicopters. And then I moved into a flight company where we flew missions and did kind of other training, all kinds of training, all the things you think of that we could do with a helicopter. We did that, and then I moved into another role, which was as a human resources officer. So I was overseeing the battalion's personnel, so everything that had to do with people. And then that was around the time that our unit deployed to Iraq, and so I also deployed, and I flew in combat as well, while fulfilling other duties as a staff officer. And then my last job was as an Army instructor. So my career actually came full circle where I started. So I started at flight school, and then at my last job in the Army, I was teaching at flight school.
Oh my goodness, so you literally did a 360 basically, where you started off as maybe like a student and you became like an instructor for other people, to teach other people. So I'm guessing that your friends and your family, they probably all thought about like you going into combat and like wondering like what's going to happen, but they were also probably very proud of you. Like were they like supportive, or did they have any like worried thoughts, or did they think of any, what was their opinions about
I would say all of the above. Everything that you just said. I think there's, I had some friends who may have been more critical of the whole thing, because it was a difficult war, and there's many different opinions about it. As a soldier, you don't really have the luxury to have that intellectual debate, but I think I had some friends who maybe were critical, but I think on the whole, most people were supportive, and I think most of them really were concerned about my safety, and I remember coming back to Thailand. I think before I went to Iraq, and every family member that I met, especially the older ones, they would give me like a Buddha amulet for good luck, for safety. So I remembered putting all of these amulets in one Ziploc bag that was like this size, right? And it was really big. It was like bursting.
Was it heavy as well?
It was really heavy, and I think there was like 18 of them. And so I had this pocket on my sleeve, because our flight suits have many pockets. So you have to put, you have flashlights, you have pens, you have notebooks, you have all kinds of stuff. So I have all these pockets, and I remembered I would always put it in my right pocket. So every time I went to fly, I would have this bulging arm right here, because it had all my Buddha amulets in it.
Was that ever like a struggle, like if you were actually like need to do something and there was like all these amulets?
Not too much. I would say I was on the small side of in terms of height and size. So I had plenty of room in the helicopter. But I think if I was really big and if I had this bulging pocket, it might have hit against the helicopter window or something.
Since you've come back, and since you probably served in the military like quite a while ago, do you ever look back on like any like maybe like positive threats, like the training and everything? Like, what's one thing you think that you gained from serving in the military?
Good question. it's funny because right now I'm at that point where I've been out of the military for as long as I was in the military. So I'm kind of like in that, I served for, yeah, I'm long transition, but it's kind of a milestone because, I was in the military for about 7.5 years. And before that, I was at the academy for 4 years. So it was really like most of my life. And about, I guess, 8 years ago is when I transitioned into civilian life, is what we call it, civilian life. And so I've been doing many other things that, I think pursuing my passion outside of the structures of the military. But the thing that I learned many things in the military because I was there during my developmental years. When you're in your 20s, you're learning a lot. You're growing and you're transforming. But I think some things that really stick with me are these values, such as duty, uh, teamwork, camaraderie, service, discipline. These are the ideals that I try to continue to live in my life right now.
I mean, you've done so many things. Just from what I've been talking to you, you've done your TED Talk before. You used to serve in the U.S. military. You used to be a director, and now you're an instructor. What's probably the career that maybe you either enjoyed the most, or you feel like this is where I belong, or this is where I want to be, or what was the reason?
This is a really thought-provoking question because when I think about it, I think it's not so much the career or this is the title that I had that I enjoyed, but it's about what you're doing and then who you're doing it with and then for what bigger purpose. So I think when all of those things aligned for me, those were the times that I enjoyed the most. And it could have been either outside or it could have been times in the military when some people say it's like when you're in the zone.
Oh, yeah, when you're in the
like you're doing something that you are engaged with. Maybe you're good at it, you enjoy it, you find it to be inherently valuable, impactful, or it aligns with your values, and you're doing it with people that you respect and enjoy and that you learn a lot from. And I think those beyond the duty title or anything else, or it's those things that I think really contribute to meaningful or like your favorite job.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're transitioning, like you've tried different things or you've moved on to new branches and you just want to see like what comes next. So it's sort of like go with the flow, like what happens. But I see that since you've been teaching for a while, was teaching always your dream goal or a job, or is there something that maybe you want to try like next in the future? Like what do you think is next for you? What do you want to do?
So teaching was not something that I was, when I was growing up, I didn't say I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I think it was something I just discovered that I enjoyed, and I think you kind of stumble on it,
Yes.
and you find that this is what you do and that you enjoy. That it's something you would do for free, it's something that when you're doing, you're like flowing, in the zone.
Overjoyed, you feel happy.
Yeah, you feel happy. Yeah, so I think it was for me. It was a process of discovery and finding that I really enjoy it. I mean, that's not to say every time I teach or every day or every class is always enjoyable. It's some days or sometimes you get ups and downs, right? But I think on the whole, it's something this process of sharing knowledge and learning more and developing kind of somewhat of an expertise around a certain area and then helping people learn these things so that they can go out and use it and really kind of fulfill their own potential. I think those are really powerful things. So I would say it's kind of more my calling.
I mean, since you've been teaching so much, and whether it could be in any different field, and you've been teaching for so long, I'm just wondering, you did your TED Talk about Thai education in Thailand, and do you think if there was a possibility that one day you could actually change one thing that you think would benefit society, or that you would like to see like a change happening, what do you think that would be?
I think for me, I've worked at, say, the classroom level. I've worked at the program level, faculty level. I think this, because the education system is a system.
Yeah.
It's really it's tough to, for one person to make
Make a difference in the world or make a change.
to really bring about this kind of sustainable change. And that's not to say that it couldn't be done, because if we look at the past, I mean, some people have been instrumental in leading change. But I think my role is really to, educate and inspire the next generation of, people who will be working in this field and who can collectively make a systems level change. And some of that has to do with, changing like deep things, like norms and beliefs and values that don't change overnight. So, I mean, if you can think of, there's the analogy of the iceberg and how you can see about 30% of it.
There's actually
And
like
then
way
there's
more
the bottom,
below.
right? And I think, there are many issues at the bottom that we have to, answer. And I think, going back to the talk, it's more about what kind of society are we aspiring to? What kind of society do we want to become? And many times people will want to take an innovation that exists in another country, another society, and try to implant that. And I think it doesn't always work.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like sometimes Thailand does do that, since, like, for me personally, I grew up and I was raised in like Australia, which was like a Western sort of like different type style of teaching, how the way teachers engage, the way that they have an overlook over the whole society. And then as growing up, hearing your teenagers and you grow into like the Thai society and like their type of education, sometimes you realize that they have different methods of teaching, different ways to try and get you engaged. But I feel like that sometimes, even though they want what's best for you, sometimes you feel like there's something that could always, that little something that you feel like people could improve on, or something that could make it better, because everyone was a student at some point, everyone's going to be a student, it's just going to keep going on and on. So do you think people as a society, if like everyone came together, if not just one person, because one person does have like a huge voice in itself, but do you think if many people also agreed with what you're thinking, do you think that maybe there could be a change in the future?
I think there are many people who do agree with the message that I was trying to send out, and it could be that many people had already thought of what I said. They just didn't have a TED talk to express it. But I think beyond just being in agreement, or people in general, I think it has to be people who have the influence to make policy, or to lead a school, or to lead a ministry. I think all of these things have to come together. It has to do with teachers and parents. It's a system, so its systems are inherently complex, and you have to look at it as a whole, and not always just the parts. But it's interesting that your experience, you started in Australia, which is Western, and then you came here. And for me, I started in Thailand, and I went to the other side. So, before we can talk about teachers being engaging in the classroom, you have to say, well, do teachers actually believe that they need to be engaging in the classroom, or do they believe that it's the students' responsibility to just take in all this information? There's a lot of things beneath the surface that we don't see, that are elements of culture and norms and beliefs that spring up into how things happen, how action happens. And so I wanted to kind of explore that in my talk, and kind of obviously I am maybe not so obvious, but I do like technology. My father was an electrical engineer, and so growing up, I was surrounded by many electronics. In the TED Talk, I talked about how I would take apart some of them because I was really curious what was inside. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah. So I kind of saw it as more of a system in education, and I think I just lost my train of thought.
It's fine. So even though you didn't study in Thailand for long, obviously, since you moved when you were very young, but now that you're teaching and you're in another place that you see actually students engaging and like maybe studying, do you think maybe education, like society in abroad, like such as America, and do you think like in Thailand, do you think they're different or do you think they're quite similar?
I think there are both differences and similarities in Thailand and the U.S. At least these two, because these are my two experiences.
Yeah.
I think there's inequities in both systems. I think there are excellent schools in both countries, but there are also schools that are struggling in both countries. In terms of the teaching, in the classroom, I think there's some diversity in terms of if you go to a school that's gifted or a magnet school or something, you will probably have a better experience than if you went to, say, a neighborhood school. And if your neighborhood happens to be a tough neighborhood, then you're gonna have something different. And I think that's the same in Thailand. I think perhaps maybe the difference then is that the U.S. is more. It's a more idealistic country and more principled, I guess, in some ways. Whereas I think, based on my experience in Thailand, more pragmatic. And so in the U.S., I think there's more of a belief of equity in education. Whether or not it plays out, I think most people would say it's something that's worth striving toward. I think in Thailand, we're still trying to answer that question, whether and how important it is to achieve equity versus, say, efficiency or excellence. So these are, I think it's an exciting time because I think there's some shifts that are happening, but I don't know exactly which direction it will go, and it's going to depend a lot on your generation. Yeah, this is going to be a multi-year process.
Because I feel like the generation I'm in now compared to maybe back then, there wasn't so much like technology, which made people like read books and made them want to study harder. They had the more like willpower to want to achieve and be successful. Whereas nowadays people are more attached to social media or like technology, and then sometimes do you feel like the students lose focus or that determination that makes people want to study, or maybe because there's more privileged people and there's people that are not so privileged but yet they might have the willpower to. Do you think it depends on what community you grew up in or what society? Do you think?
So I think you're asking if like the link between motivation and technology, and then other social factors around that.
Yeah.
I will say that your generation has it hard because technology, for all its values, meaning in terms of learning, it can be distracting.
Yeah.
If I mean, it's made to be distracting. It's what we call like user engagement. And say with social media, these the companies, they hire people who know how to get you really engaged, some people say addicted to it. So I think your generation has it much harder because you have to still achieve all these things academically and in life, and now you know more of what's going on in the world. Your parents know more. You're more aware of what your friends are doing. So you have to still kind of achieve all of these things, but then you have all of these bells and whistles that are drawing your attention away from focus. So actually, it's much harder for you. In terms of motivation, I think it really depends. I think motivation, technology itself is value neutral, meaning it's not good, it's not bad. It's just how you use it. Yeah. So with motivation, it just if you're say you're studying something and it's not inherently something you're passionate about, maybe you're not good at it, you don't enjoy it, yeah, then every 9 times out of 10 you're going to choose whatever else is more interesting than what you thought you were interested in. So I think it's much deeper than whether does technology reduce motivation. Yeah, as far as social like structures, I think it affects technology is affecting students from all levels.
Just talking through these few minutes has actually gave me more opinions about like what I should be thinking, what maybe other people could be thinking about, but maybe they just didn't have the voice or they didn't know how to put it exactly into words or how to project it. And I'm sure GSSE is so lucky to have an instructor. Just listening to you makes me actually want to go into one of your lectures or your classes, but for the future people that maybe want to join your faculty, like, would you have anything or advice or tips to say to them?
Yes, you know, I welcome anyone who wants to come apply. I mean, it's not for everyone. Meaning, I mean, some people, if you want to be a doctor, then of course I would encourage you to go and apply to medical, faculty, faculty of medicine. But if I think most students who come to our program they kind of know that there's something that is kind of like
Feeling in your gut, like,
yeah,
oh, I feel like, oh, this is for me. You come in here, the environment, and you think, this is where I belong.
right. It's kind of like not only do we choose our students, but our students also choose us. In terms of what advice I would have, I'd say you gotta really study hard because I'm very tough in class. I am very demanding. I will give you a lot of work to do, even if it means I have to do more work. But I am really committed to students' growth.
Usually more work, but that means more knowledge, which means you just want what's best for them. You just want them to strive harder to be able to achieve bigger things.
Yes, because I do believe that we are capable of much, much more than we think we are. And that comes not just from a theoretical perspective, but like I've seen people achieve really seemingly impossible things. And I see that in our students, and I want to kind of push them there, close to, what they think is their limit, just to show students that it's not really their limit and that you're capable of much, much more. So yeah, I mean, just apply everywhere that you are interested in, and I think if you trust I would say your gut, and have done research on which program will lead you to where you want to go, or even which program resonates with you, or you feel passionate about. I think that will get you in the right direction. The good thing is that there are more faculties nowadays, so you have more choices than say parents. Your parents may have had fewer choices, but GSSE we just want our students to have these skills, 21st century skills that will enable them to go out and pursue. Sometimes could be work that doesn't exist yet. It could be that they are the ones to create these things. So we don't want to put them into a mold and say this, you will become this, because over the 4 years you change, and sometimes you need that room to explore. And as you know, in the Western model, when you go to university, you don't actually declare a major until like your third or fourth year, and that's so that you can have some kind of freedom to explore and figure out more about what you're good at, what you want to do. So I would say that's a difference in Thailand. In Thailand, there's I think there's more of an emphasis on knowing what you want to do before you apply. And then if you change your mind, it's really hard, because then you have to either start over or just keep doing what you're doing. So I think it's I welcome anyone to apply.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been actually an honor to be able to talk to you and actually to hear your opinions and your way that you think about the society. And I can't wait to see what happens next for not just you or just me, but also for everyone.
So thank you, Jess.
Thank you. Guys, that was the end of EP5, so please don't forget to like and subscribe in below on BJM Talks on YouTube, and also to follow our Instagram. Thank you.